Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And we got our tight end draft preview, which is a huge need for the New York Giants. So very exciting to touch up on the tight ends for this draft class. And they're all, we're not missing out on the top guys if we go value, because there's really no top, round one, top of round two guys in this class. But there's a lot of guys you like who could think can be decent players. And the Giants don't have a tight end really besides Ricky Seals-Jones and Chris Myrick. Justin, how are you?
Bobby Skinner is going to touch some tight ends this episode. Hi, everyone. We have Tim Hasselbeck days until the NFL draft. Tim Hasselbeck was backup quarterback for the Giants in 2005, war number 8. Kind of forgot about that until I looked it up before we recorded. Excited to talk about some tight ends, Bobby, and I'll touch some with you too.
I don't think I said that. I think you're trying to put words in my
mouth.
No,
you said we're going to touch up on some tight ends, so you did say that.
Okay, well, first,
touch some tight ends.
Speaking of some tight ends, this episode was brought to you by Dan Christian. He's our first ever editor's name was Krish. How about that?
Yes.
I wonder how he's doing.
He's a Division I athlete, or he's going to be a Division I athlete for volleyball.
Shows you how we were using child labor. Ben Mazzullo, he's part of the World Beater tier, and we got in all capital letters, Curse Basilicato. So I'm going to announce it like it's written, Kurt Basilicato.
All caps.
And then Craig Savitsky, who reminds me of Dirk Nowitzki. Justin, who are these people?
Well, these people went to patreon.com/talkinggiants. Update, I didn't throw away both of my Hog Molly shirts. I threw away one. I have one in white that I threw away. But I thought I had a second one, and I did, and I found it. So I'm wearing it today for everybody that's really concerned that I didn't have any Hog Molly shirts, so I don't need to order more. And you can win one of these shirts, and then we also have more shirts 2 times a month if you become a patron, because we do shirt raffles, plus some other tiers and plus some other benefits, thanks to our patrons.
All right, Justin, the tight end position. We go into this draft with 9 picks, 2 third-rounders, a 4th, 2 5ths,
and a 6th.
And that's like the when we have our multitude of picks, rounds 3 through 6, it's like, okay, it's like you really feel like one of these picks will be a tight end. Like the Giants have Ricky Seals-Jones really isn't a start. He's not a starting tight end. And then after that, you don't even have another backup tight end unless you count Chris Myrick, which is much fun as we have with Myrick. He's not. You shouldn't be going to a season with your tight end too. I think the Giants can come away from this draft with 2 tight ends. I really do. Look for 2 different types, and we're going to hit on some different types of players in this. But I also, and I've had this point for most positions, but I also don't want the Giants to force a need. If they think there's a better player, if every draft pick comes up and they think there's a better player than the tight end that they have, that's their next on their board, Justin, I also think they shouldn't force it, and they can go into, signing some scraps, whether it's Lee Smith or whoever, and go into the season with a bad tight end room. It's not like going into the season with a bad right tackle. It's not optimal, and again, I do want them to come out of this class with a tight end, and I'd rather 2 tight ends than 0 tight ends, but I also don't think they should just force it just because tight end's such a huge need.
I don't know where I am, man. I don't know where I am because I feel like it's a lose-lose. If you're not getting a Trey McBride, if you're not getting one of these top 5 tight ends in this class, therefore you would be passing on another good player. Let's say it's 67, 81, 112, right? I feel like that's the sweet spot. If you're going to walk away with a solid tight end in this class, it's 67, 81, 112. That's where the sweet spot of where I think the run of tight ends will be. So if you're not grabbing one at those picks, then you're probably going to have somebody starting, or do you want Ricky Seals-Jones? And at that point, I go back and forth because it's a tough spot that the Giants are in with this tight end position. I feel like you want to say something.
Well, no, it's just this roster is not going to look good this year. There's going to be some huge hole. Essentially, here's what I'm saying, is you're not going to fill every hole on this team in the draft. And even if you hit every position of need in the draft, each draft pick is a position of need. You're not overdrafting from one spot, and you're not going for a luxury pick like a wide receiver. Well, guess what? not all 9 picks are going to be good players. You know what I mean? So that's just more the basis of my argument is like, you know what, especially in rounds 4 through 7, the likelihood of those guys becoming good players is very low. So get the players that you think have the best chance of being good players and not necessarily fill the holes. That being said, I think there should be a tight end there. You know, when we do our final mock drafts on draft day, I think both of us will probably have a tight end there because we'll feel good about it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that we feel good about the player, like, hey, being a starter, but they just need bodies. They need bodies in the tight end room. They need bodies in the safety room. They need bodies in the corner room. There's a lot of areas on the Giants roster where they kind of need human beings with pulses in those rooms right now. And tight end, you can make an argument, is the one that is most dire.
Really sucks that Caden Smith got hurt because we could finally be Caden Smith tight end one time. And then
we're looking at this saying, hey, we don't need to take a tight end, right? Like that would be the talking point where it's like, yeah, getting one at the latter stages of the draft, or even if you do want to take a Trey McBride, right? But now it's like, well, who knows what we're going to get? And, you know, I maybe some people are a little worried about reaching for a tight end. So we'll talk about that and we'll break it down by a player-by-player basis here.
Well, let's get into the player-by-player basis, and we're going to go according to my rankings. I have Greg Dulcich as third, but we hit him on the mid-round draft prospect podcast with Nick Filato, so we're not going to talk about Dulcich.
But quick, is he the best fit for Dable's system because of his speed and his his long strides and stuff like that? Is he the best fit for Dable's system out of this class, do you feel?
I don't think anyone who doesn't block well is the best fit for anything.
I'd agree with that.
You know, but if in talking about just the passing game, yeah, he's probably the best fit for any team. If you're eliminating the fact that tight ends need to block and do other things besides just be fast as hell. But I do have him as third on this list. But the guy who I have number 1, and this isn't a hot take, I think a lot of people have come to this as number 1, and that's Trey McBride, tight end out of Colorado State. In fact, in my way too early midseason mock draft, Justin, I was like, wow, who's this guy from Colorado State? Just randomly watched him. Like, this guy's a beast. Obviously, he's not going in the 5th round like he was projected at that point. He's projected a much higher. He's 6'4", 246 pounds. Put up a ton of production at Colorado State. This past year, 90 catches, 1,100 yards, only 1 touchdown, so that can be a little alarming, with a 74.5% catch rate. Justin, here's something else. So he averaged 78 yards per game on 75.2% catch rate. That's crazy the last 3 seasons. And I think his QB and offense left so much production for him on the field, whether it was just missing him or not throwing it to him. Where there's so many times where it's like, why are you forcing this throw when you have Trey McBride wide open underneath, you know, on a drag route or whatever? So he put up a ton of production. I want to go in each of these players, like athleticism, blocking, and then route running. Overall, athleticism is good, not great. Like his long speed is there, and he's got good agility, but his get off is average. And then blocking, I think he blocks with a good pace and base. Needs to stay more connected on the blocks in line, but he just looks the most comfortable blocking out of all of these guys. There's some guy besides Jelani Woods, but he just looks comfortable as a blocker, and you realize he's going to get better at. And tight ends do get better at blocking at the NFL level. But I think he needs to stay more connected in line, and then obviously you can use him in space and like whams and lead blocks. Here's where he separates himself. He utilizes the entire route tree, works leverage really, really well versus man with physical releases. Like there's no slowing him up off the line of scrimmage. He's going to get off and he's going to work leverage extremely well. And he gets in and out of his breaks quickly and crisply. The one thing I think he would need to be better is, and versus zone, just needs to be better selling and manipulating the defenders versus zone. But I think his best trait, Justin, is he's just great in contested catches situations. We
saw that at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, really, in the rain too. Just great hands. He's an adjustment, his ability to adjust, box out, and snatch the ball out of the air. And I keep on saying, and this is great too with him, and this is why he's tight end 1. He can scoot once he has the ball, and he's just a bruiser with yak. You know, like he has like. You think of when someone says contact balance, you think of Kadarius Toney. Show up to camp, buddy. but he has contact balance where it's just strong. Like, he's hard to bring down, and he can make some moves and just stay up when you're like, I can't believe he stood up and added 5 yards to this play. I think he's tight end 1, and it's an interesting year, Justin, where a lot of teams probably view him as tight end 1, and they all think they can get a chance with this guy because he's not going in the top 15.
Yeah, he's not going in the top 15. I mean, I don't even know if he's a guy that you consider at 36. I just think that there's better football players out there. Now, I really do like Trey McBride. I really do. He's an intense football player. I'm a sucker for intense football players. Bobby, you mentioned his yards after the catch. He's one of the best yards after the catch tight ends in this class. Probably his best trait, like you said, body control and ability to catch the ball in those contested situations. We did see that at the Senior Bowl. I call tight ends that are bad after the catch and that are tight, that are just tight players. They're slow. I call them thumpers. McBride is not a thumper. I mean, he's looking to run you over in space, but he also is just he's also a good blocker too.
He's the most well-rounded player in the class.
Yeah, but I'm very
with
confident,
some
even
great
though
ability
I'm not sold on him at 36, and I don't know if he's going to last to 67. I'm very sure that he's going to be a very solid football player for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you take him at 36, and I do think he'll probably be gone by 67. Like, that's where I'm at with McBride. Maybe not by much. I think he'll go, Pat Fryermuth didn't go until in the 45, 50 range last year.
Yeah, he fell, yeah.
And we both like Pat Fryermuth, so maybe he is there at 67, but I think because he is the top tight end in this class, I think he'll go a little early, but it's not crazy to see him flipping down to 67. And if he's there, I think, it's not a slam dunk. Like, you got to look at the board, obviously, but it's like, I think if he's there at 67, he's at the top of all of our boards, if not the top guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And the thing with McBride, why I feel like he's not going earlier, is because he doesn't necessarily have anything elite part of this game. I feel like there's some good to great things a part of his game, but there's nothing that you're really looking at him, maybe besides ball control, but also strength at the catch point. Strength at the catch point and the ability to catch the ball and contested catches. So maybe that's the only part where you could say that his part of it is elite, but the rest is just good.
Yeah. But again, you look at the NFL, and we always fall in love with these speedsters, these guys, and then Kyle Pitts is like a one-of-one type guy, but, the Noah Fant, you fall in love with these guys, and then you just see year after year, you find these tight ends that are like Trey McBride, who come in and are Pro Bowl-worthy tight ends, and not, or I'll say, top-of-the-league tight ends. And nobody falls in love with them because they're not burning you down the field. And that's why Greg Dulcich is ranked number 1 by some bigger people, because Greg Dulcich is the guy who can burn you down the field, even though he has no blocking. He's a small frame and has some other areas of his game that aren't great. And but it's like, okay, well, we got the one guy who's super fast. And it's a position that I think is kind of hard to adjust to in the NFL. Okay, because you know what? These DBs that you're facing are a lot bigger. They're a lot faster. They're more physical with you. The blocking is a different level, and you're just not as much of a mismatch, So I think it's a position that it really takes some time to get your legs in the NFL.
But out of everybody in this class, like, McBride is that guy that you predict that he's going to have the quickest transition, and then over time that he'll be able to adjust to that. So,
you know that Mike Ditka is still the rookie receiving leader for tight ends.
50s, 60s guy, right?
That's how hard it is to, and I think Kyle Pitts is second. So it shows how many tight ends have been taken in the first round, top of the second round, and just haven't been able to come in and produce right away. But you see these guys kind of grow into some decent roles.
I'm going to look up Mike Ditka right now.
Really a great football person when you think about it.
1961 to 1972. He had 1,076 receiving yards his rookie year, never elapsed more than 904 receiving yards for the rest of his career. So his rookie year was the best year. 12 touchdowns, and then never got more than 8 touchdowns for the rest of his career.
Don't be hating.
No, I'm not hating. It's just it's bizarre how his rookie year was his best year.
Yeah. All right, next on this list, my tight end 2. And this is my, like out there take, surprise take.
Yeah, kind of is. Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't expect to get at this point because, a lot of the good almost all these tight ends went down to the Senior Bowl, which means we did some early prep on them, but not like full reports. So as a casual watch, I wasn't in love with this guy. When I watched him intently, I found love, and I think he's the second best tight end in this league, but it's not going to be obvious to people. You got to really look at his game. And that's Iowa State tight end Charlie Kolar, 6'6", 252 pounds. This past year for Iowa State, he put up 62 catches, 750 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He had a lot of touchdown production over his career, over 20 touchdowns at Iowa State. Over like a 62 to 67% catch rate. Justin, I think he's got that big Y inline tight end, but he does play more of a split out role. But as far as athleticism, he's got an above average speed with better get off, but again, he's not a burner. Like you can never be confused for a burner. I don't think his blocking is good, but it's not awful, and he can line up in line. You can line him in line. It's not going to be the best thing, and I think there's room for improvement with his frame. And I think he's got like some decent blocking technique, but he just needs to bring some more nastiness to the blocking in reality.
Yeah, I think he extends his arms pretty well, and I'm looking up his arm length right now.
34.5-inch arms. He's got long arms. Probably the longest arms out of all the guys we talk about.
He extends his arms well, and I think, why, he has such long arms. You can see that really show up in his ability to have contested catches.
Yeah, he's just got to bring some more nastiness to the blockings. But here's where he sets himself apart. He is an extremely smart and fluid route runner. Like, it's beautiful when you watch. And in fact, I watched the Cover 1 guys who we reference a lot. They had him on for a film room, and it was like, man, this is some next level route running stuff from Charlie Kolar. And that stuff backs up from what other scouts say. It wasn't just like him going on their channel and they found a few plays. Like, no, it's consistent. And I suppose like he was like a 4.0 GPA, like just extremely smart.
I have stats on. I have something on that. He graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering and a minor in biomedical engineering, 3.99 GPA. And then he just he made an A- in a biology class that he didn't even need to take for his degree, but he just took it just because.
The guy's smart, and he understands the game of football, and he understands everything about rounding. He understands leverage and sell at an elite level. At an elite level, they were talking about just like a 5-yard out, where it's like, hey, he was playing outside leverage, so I started with inside leverage, broke outside, but I didn't just break out to the out route, which I could have right there. I sold vertical to get him out of place and then got out. And that's just like a 5-yard route. This is like Jason Witten level, like stuff, like the Y stick, like, Jason Garrett like cried at Jason Witten's press conference about Y freaking stick. Like really good stuff. When he's playing against zone coverage, he's just an unbelievable manipulator of safeties and linebackers to just really sell and get those guys in the area that he wants. And then when he's playing man coverage, he knows how, like I said, to work that leverage. And I think he's going to draw a lot of pass interferences and holdings versus man coverage. Okay, because he's not the fastest guy in the world, and safeties are going to think they can get hands on him and jam and then ride in the hip. And he's gonna really kill them at the stem, and it's gonna lead to grabbing. And it showed up on film, so I think that's gonna happen at the next level. When he's playing against zone, in the shallow stuff, he just knows how to sit well, and he just finds the spot even on like broken plays for the QB. And I think that's an underrated thing for tight end. Something Evan Ingram was like god awful at. And like they use him in motion a ton. He reads defenses pre-snaps. Like he kind of has an idea of what they're doing. He knows their tendencies. I mean, he's just like he's a genius.
Yeah.
And then catches great through contract. He only had a 2.8% drop rate at Iowa State, so no drops aren't an issue. And then when he's not really a contested catch guy, you know what I mean, where it's just like throw it up and he'll contort his body. But he does use his size to box out defenders where you're down the red zone. You line up in tight, you line up in tight like the Giants did a lot. You split him out wide, and he knows how to sell that slant and then box that out for a touchdown. But again, he's not going to be like a big contested leaper. Justin, I fell in love with this guy. I was not expecting to fall in love with him at all, but I have him as a second tight end in this kind of weak tight end class.
Yeah, I have strong hands, and I'm giving him a little bit more credit to contort his body to make some catches, maybe a little bit more than you do. Maybe he's not a leaper, but when you're 6'6" and you have 34-inch arms, you don't need to be the biggest leaper in the world. So, just made his money in the red zone. Just Charlie Kolar, whether it was something going on at Iowa State or it was him. Just Charlie Kolar in the end zone. It was just a match made in heaven. With all those career touchdowns. I have 23 down. So 67.8% of his catches were either a first down or a touchdown, which usually I think you see 67 to 70% of guys of tight ends. Maybe they're getting a first down or a play's result in a touchdown. 76.8% of his catches either a first down or a touchdown. So that's crazy, crazy high, crazy impressive. He was a center of a state championship winning basketball team. Like you see a lot of these tight ends have. They have that basketball background, and he certainly plays like it too, while also being wicked smart.
If the Giants land this guy, and not only land him, but land him on day 3, you're not going to see anyone more excited than me. This will be stake my reputation on guy. No. This is a day 3 guy that I am going to get excited about, and I am going to put expectations on. And then he'll have a bad first, season, and then second year will really pop off, and I'll give a big old "I told you so" tour on him. So Charlie Kolar, love you, bro. All right, next on this list, interesting player. We didn't really know who he was. He wasn't really on our radar until the combine. And he's going to be 20. So it's interesting because I think it's, I have him ranked 4th, but if you look at some other things, okay, maybe that slides him down NFL teams boards. But I'm just looking at these guys as players and not really putting age into the factor. Going to be 24, transfer from Oklahoma State, where in 2 years at Oklahoma State, this guy had 24 catches, a little over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just that was it. But it's Jelani Woods, tight end out of Virginia. This guy has the best tight end frame in the whole damn class. 6'7", 259 pounds, 34 1/8 inch arms. Ran a 4.61 40, which is great for that size of 24 bench press reps. Really did the best tight end wise testing. So you say, oh look, obvious ideal tight end frame, can run down the field fastly. So what's this guy's deal? Justin, he might be the best blocker out of all these guys. I think he is the best blocker out of all these guys. He knows how to bring it from the start. He sustains. His feet are pretty good, and I just think he's the best blocker out of all these guys. Do you agree or disagree?
Out of all these guys we're talking about, I think McBride is better.
Okay, I just think Jelani uses his frame, and again, Jelani's 24 years old, where McBride is. I don't know how old he is, but he's probably not going to be 24 years old. So probably that comes with a little grown man to his game in the college game.
I mean, he brings it though. I mean, that's if you're talking about guys that just bring it, and he had zero blocking penalties this year too, whereas some other guys have had some penalties associated with them too. If you're talking about a guy that brings it and he doesn't just bank on his size, Woods definitely gets the edge there. So.
And he's got good speed too. His long speed is really good, but I do think off the snap it's very slow and not just not smooth at all off the snap. But once you get him up the seams, he's really quick. He's really fast, and that's where he'll do most of his damage. And that's where he did most of his damage was down the seams for Virginia.
His 10-yard split. If you look at the his 10-yard split and you measure it up to the rest of the class, it was an elite score. Out of 10, it was a 9.64 out of 10, his 10-yard split. His 20-yard split was a 9.72, and then his 40-yard dash, that official 4.61, was 9.32 out of 10. He has a relative athletic score, the best out of 998 tight ends from 1987 to 2022. If you combine the relative athletic score of your size and then the speed grades and the agility grades and the explosion grades, he is the best put it all together prospect since 1987.
Yeah, you don't see tight ends like that size run down the field like that. And actually, I thought he had better get off when he was split out compared to in line. Okay, so he's fast and he's big and can block. What else can he do? I think breaking routes, he does it really well, which makes him deadly in the seams. Whether it's post, digs, indie routes, I think he does well. But when it's just weird. He's just a weird player because like when he's breaking outside of the hashes, it's just not as smooth. Not horrible, but just not as smooth. And obviously he's going to be a red zone threat with his size, running, big slants. He catches the ball away from his body and his hands, and he can go up and leap. Like, he has some really nice catches. Couple things that I don't like. Like I said before, those outbreaking routes, I feel like NFL guys are going to be able to stay in his hip, which, again, with that size and speed, you can get away with a little bit. Here's something. He had a bad drop rate, 10.7% drop rate.
I think he kind of fits what Brian Daboll wants to do kind of well with crossing routes that are going over the middle of the field, and they can result in some 15, 20-yard plays, right? So if you look at the spray chart of where he caught the ball and where he was targeted at Virginia, you see a lot of by the left hash between the 5, 10, 15-yard range. That's his hot spot. That's his sweet spot. And then I think, hey, you go to the film, well, what does that actually look like? Starting on the right side of the field, and then those one-cut kind of routes, he's catching the ball kind of in that range. So that kind of tells me, if you look at his size, his speed combo, I think that could fit Daboll kind of well. 11 contested catches, which was the 6th most in the country for tight ends this year. I think he can be a matchup nightmare. And even if he isn't separating well, right? I think the fact that he can go up and he can high point that football, and you're telling your quarterback, throw that football where nobody else can get him, because Jelani Woods is just so big and he's so tall that nobody's going to be able to get to it. A cornerback's not going to get to it. A linebacker's not going to get to it. A safety's not going to be able to get to it. So even if he's kind of covered, he can still be open. And I think that he can be a matchup nightmare if the Giant, or if any football team drafts him over that middle part of the field, whether it's on the seam or Brian Daboll likes to run those crossing routes.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I do think the age thing is a little worrisome, and he didn't put up production at Oklahoma State. He's just kind of a weird player, but I got him 4th, so I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, traits. You invest in the traits, and why the age is a factor is because he does have to develop hey, you got to become more of a refined route runner. Hey, maybe as a blocker you got to be a little bit more under control. Some of these things. So. And the fact that you're already 24 can kind of put you behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Next on this list, Justin, who I think is the guy that my opinion can fluctuate on the most. I think he has the highest ceiling out of all these guys. Coastal Carolina tight end Isaiah Likely, 6'4", 245 pounds. This guy can move, man. Like, he put up a lot of production at Coastal Carolina. He's just a speedster. The issue is he's going to have to split out wide a lot. He's not an inline tight end, which is a knock on him. And it's why, with all these good things that I'm about to say about him, he's not at the top of the class. But he has really good speed, and his get off is matched with it. And there's a second gear to it. Like, he looks like he could play wide receiver with his speed. And again, he was recruited by a lot of schools to play wide receiver. And then it's like, okay, well, he just runs in straight line? No, like, he has the ability to sink his hips and just change direction really nicely. So like, athletic wise, like, he can freaking move. He didn't run the 40 time at the combine, but he had 36-inch vertical jump. Blocking is a huge issue. Like, it's always going to be an issue for him in line. Coastal Carolina they didn't even ask him to do it. Even when he was lined up in line, they didn't use him as an inline blocker. But here's something that's interesting for a guy that is this issue as a blocker. When you put him against a second level or out on the perimeter, he has some like these great blocking routes where he's like bullying guys. Sometimes it's against smaller competition, so you don't want to put too much weight into it. But like as a downfield blocker, shout out third-year Letterman, he can have some like devastating downfield blocks.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah,
but when he's in line, it's just not there at all. Like, it's just not an ability he has. Some of the other issues, the route tree was very limited at Coastal Carolina, and a lot of it was scheme production. Route running wise, like in that limited route tree, he does attack the stem really well, and again, he has like that ability to cut on a dime. But he just isn't a great route runner outside of that. Like, his routes are one speed. He doesn't manipulate zone defenders. He catches the ball with his body instead of grabbing it out of the air. And he has nice leaping ability and ability to contest catches, but I worry that I don't know if he's going to be able to be that contested guy in the NFL. Because a lot of his contested catches situations weren't him just going up and high pointing it. It was him being able to box out a smaller defender, already stacking in front of them, and essentially catching it in his chest. So there's so much to like, but it's like, I don't know if he's going to translate to the NFL well.
Yeah, it's tough. Him and Jelani Woods have that concern together about catching the football against your chest instead of going up and actually kind of grabbing it.
But Woods has like the wow catches.
No,
he
does.
drops it, but he has the wow high point where likely it's like this is a great contested catch, but like you stack this DB and you're still catching it in your chest.
No, but you like the upside, right? Ton of highlight worthy plays. He averaged 20 yards per reception, which as a tight end, this is kind of insane bananas. Averaged 20 yards per reception during CCU's big 2020 season. And then he also accounted for Coastal Carolina's 3 longest pass plays from scrimmage in 2020 as well. We talked about how Charlie Kolar is a really smart guy. Well, Isaiah Likely is a really smart guy too. Landed on the Dean's List, President's List, 4.0 GPA in each of his last 3 semesters between 2020 and 2021. But again, I mean, you're a project tight end who's going to be a flex tight end in the NFL. How does that translate? And, how are NFL teams going to use you like that? And are they committed to using you like that?
Like, I can see a team having him second on their board for tight ends, and I could see a team having him 9th on their board for tight ends.
Yep.
Like, I think he's a very interesting player where like the opinion on him is going to fluctuate all over the place.
Like the 49ers, probably 9th on their board.
Yeah, that's true. The next guy I want to talk about actually is someone who I think would fit the 49ers kind of well. But before that, I'm going to read an ad for SeatGeek. We love SeatGeek. Did you see the article about us partnering with SeatGeek, Justin, in the podcast?
Well, it wasn't really us. It was John. I mean, we are a part of John Boy Media.
Not us. We're one of 4 shows that are presented by that SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor. What do you mean?
I control F'd it, and I didn't see Talking Giants in the article.
No, but if you listen to the podcast, we're one of only 4 shows that are presented by SeatGeek.
Oh, okay. I didn't listen to the podcast.
And most of the shows aren't presented by anything, to be honest.
No, that is very true. So I take it back. Flex.
And I still can't get no damn tickets to the Orlando Magic Sweet Games, but you can get whatever tickets you want with SeatGeek. I can't believe we make $7 million a year in revenue. Or not even a year, last year. And that was just announced to the public. I can believe that. I can't believe that we just announced it to the public.
Can I say something?
Now, does my $500,000 salary not make so much sense? How about that?
Makes a lot of sense. I don't like when content creators kind of openly say how much their company makes. It may be part of the whole scope of how everything works, but I know some other, like, we're friends with another content creator who kind of makes videos about how much the company makes. It makes me like uncomfortable, but maybe it's normal. I don't know.
I don't know. I was surprised. Well, we don't share anybody with our our podcast numbers and stuff. We just show where we're at in the charts. But listen, this is about SeatGeek, not John Boy friggin' Media, even though we're partners. Live events are back, which means you could get $20 off tickets at SeatGeek with promo code Giants. If you don't know what SeatGeek is, figure it out. They're a ticketing app that makes buying tickets super simple. We've got the app on our phones. I use it all the time. Even though I can't go to a Nets game when I'm in New York, I would like to go to maybe some sort of game. I'd like to go to a Knicks. Oh, shit. They're not playing.
Is there a Yankee game? You've never been to a Yankee game.
Dude, I might be able to go to a Yankee game. Let me look at Yankees schedule.
Yankees schedule.
I'm gonna look at the schedule and we can figure out and we can tell people to go to SeatGeek and go to the same Yankee game as us.
Section 422 has very cheap tickets. They're not the cheapest, but they are very, very cheap. And that is kind of
you don't need to go to Section 422. You need to go to SeatGeek and use their deal scores, rated 1 through 10. The green means good, red means bad.
But then go to Section 422, because that's the one that I always go to. And it usually always has a green deal score.
Orioles at Yankees. All 3 Tuesday. So I'm getting there Tuesday.
And we're not recording Tuesday night.
You want to go Tuesday night?
I think we should do that.
Because we are recording Wednesday night. So Tuesday night, April 26th, me and Justin are going to Orioles at Yankees. How about that?
Wow.
And we're going to use SeatGeek. How about that? Whether it's football, concert, basketball, baseball, like us, festivals, or more, SeatGeek puts tickets from all over the web in one place to make buying simple. SeatGeek rates every ticket from 0 to 10 to make sure you are getting a good deal. Green means good. Red means bad. You know what? We're going to get the best damn score in the thing. If you're listening to this, it would be a real shame if you gave us a suite. Do we still have like the John Boy Media suite?
Yeah, there's a connection.
Every ticket on SeatGeek is backed by their buying guarantee, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. Don't worry, we've got the hookup. Use code GIANTS for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code GIANTS. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app. All right, Justin, next guy on this list.
The rest of these tight ends, the gap is very similar, right?
Yes. So this would be 6 on my list. We didn't talk about Dulcich, but it's the 5th guy we're talking about. And that's Jake Ferguson, tight end out of Wisconsin. 6'5", 250 pounds. Horrible combine. And the combine does speak to his athleticism, Justin. But he's your typical inline tight end who will, I think, best be used as a safety blanket. But I think what he does well, he does really well. And it shows up in the production at Wisconsin. For 4 years, he had over 30 catches. This past year, he had 46 catches. And again, look at the catch rates too the last 3 years. For a Wisconsin team that isn't very good at passing the ball and their quarterback kind of sucks. 75%, 70%, 77% catch rates without being a great athlete. But the athleticism is an issue for him, and it puts a ceiling on him. Like, Jake Ferguson is not going to be the best tight end in this class. He's not going to surprise anyone and be the best tight end in this class. But I think he can be a really solid one in the NFL. But the speed is just not there. Blocking wise, you can see the ability to get better at it. Like, I think he's diverse for any scheme. I think he can work into a wide zone scheme as a blocker. But I think he just loses strength wise when it turns into a wrestling match. Like, he's good through the start, and he just loses like the end of his not able to sustain, which couldn't be an issue for a guy that we're talking about as being a simple inline tight end. But the things he does well, he ran the full route tree at Wisconsin. Well, people say, oh, well, with the athleticism, he won't run the full route tree in the NFL. Okay, whatever. Caden Smith ran a 4.92. He can run the full route tree. But his route running overall to me is really, really good. His ability to sell and get leverage versus man gives him separation. It's not going to give him a ton of separation because of the athleticism, but it does give him separation. And then versus zone, like, he knows how to tempo his routes, and he always finds the right hole, the right place to sit for the quarterback. Always. When he's pressed up or contact, it just doesn't faze him at all. And here's what I think his best trait is he has just some amazing contested catches, and he's like a real red zone threat. Yep. He even breaks some tackles, even though he's not fast. So
yes.
Again, Jake Ferguson is a low ceiling player who I think is going to be a good tight end, a safety blanket, maybe a tight end 2 in the league. Maybe a tight end 1 on some bad teams or teams that don't prioritize tight end. But I do think he's going to be a good player. Like, I think he's going to last in the league for a while.
I really loved Jake Ferguson. I'm not saying he's going to be a great player, but I really love the football player that Jake Ferguson is, and kind of limited by the offense that he was in. I mean, I will say Jake Ferguson, he puts dudes on their ass. He's chipping, he's pulling as that kind of H-back, right?
Yeah, he's a diverse blocker. He can do everything that's being asked. He just needs to get better at it and more consistent.
Yeah, and my note is, in terms of his improvement on blocking, he needs to do a better job latching onto defenders and holding blocks. So that's
his hands are sloppy.
That's the same critique. But not every blocking rep needs to end with the highlight finish. Like, I almost felt like he's going for that highlight finish. He's going and he's trying to drive guys 10 yards off the ball, 5 yards off the ball. Just win the rep. There's no need to put on all this flair when you're blocking. Win the rep, turn your body, win that way. No need to just always put guys on their ass all the time. He was relied on for years at Wisconsin, which a lot of guys in this class, they had one good year when they're as a starter. But he logged at least 30 receptions in 4 straight seasons, and an offense that's been bad for quite a while. Ran a ton of seam routes
and runs the ball a ton.
Ran a ton of seam routes, and I love the way that he would air some flair to them. Almost looked like they were stick and nods. Except,
at the stem, he just does a good job of working leverage, getting his hands in almost like a swim move over. And again, he's not going to get a ton of separation on those because of his athleticism, but he does get separation. His ability to make contested catches makes him a weapon.
Now you can call him a thumper. I don't think he's a stereotypical thumper. First guy that comes to mind, Daniel Bellinger from San Diego State. He's just the thumper. All right, you're just going to thump with the ball in his hands. He's going to put 2 hands on the ball after the catch, and somebody's going to come and swoop his ankles. But Ferguson is smart and knowing how he can get yards after the catch in space, whether it is lowering his shoulder, whether it is hurdling over those ankle divers. So that's what makes him a little different from a typical thumper, is that if you can hurdle, if you can put your shoulder down, lower man wins. So I really do like Jake Ferguson. The only thing that puts a pause on me if the Giants are going to be drafting a tight end, odds are, are you going to be tight end number 1 right away because Ricky Seals-Jones is here? So I go back and forth between, I think him being tight end 1 right away or him getting some sort of significant playing time right away, it may affect the way that he develops as a player because he may be thrown into the fire. And I would hate that for him.
Yeah, that's
But it didn't really hurt Caden Smith. I mean, he was kind of thrown into the fire.
He kind of reminds me of Caden Smith, honestly. They use him in the tight end screen game too, a little bit too. You mentioned him as like, you know, being able to break some. Like they use him as a tight end, like in the screen game.
Not an exciting player. It would be like adding a younger Caden Smith with more years of control, but I do think he has the potential to be better than that. That's my final
And Caden Smith put up really good production at Stanford, and maybe if he was at Stanford, he would put up similar production. Like Caden Smith averaged like 75 yards per game at Stanford.
Yeah. Spoiler alert: I may be taking Jake Ferguson in the mock draft that we do. I may.
We'll see.
I like him that much.
We got a lot of guys to go before that. See, when I did my last mock draft, I picked Austin Allen in the 6th, but it's like I just kept on getting each round. I'm like, I like these players more than the tight end. Yep. Mm-hmm. You know, that's actually where I got the thought of like, no, don't necessarily force a tight end. All right, the next guy on this list is polarizing, and I'm just not as high on him as other people. And what I think it is there was name recognition. He played at Ohio State, and people are like, oh, he's good. And then they started watching the other tight ends, and it's like, I don't see him on top of anybody's big board. And I think it's for rightfully so. That's Jeremy Ruckert, tight end of Ohio State, 6'5", 250, because he looks like he has the frame, and he has some like really nice plays. But he didn't put up any production at Ohio State, but I don't hold that necessarily against him because of Ohio State's offense. But his best year was this last year where he had 26 catches and 309 yards. Here's the thing. We talk about all these other guys, and it's like, they're really good at this. I don't think Jeremy Ruckert has that really good trait. Like, let me go. I'm going to read it straight down the scouting report for him. Average athlete with decent straight line speed. Good frame, but blocking is average. Good footwork into block, but is shed easily. Strength issues. Hasn't ran much of the underneath route tree. Smooth route runner with ins, outs, and corners down the field. Bad agility will keep him from separating in NFL. Sets up the stem well to get deep past linebackers. Solid hands catcher. Good concentration through catch in traffic versus blanketed DBs. Can adjust well to the ball, but won't leap for it. That's an average. There's nothing that really you write home about in Jeremy Ruckert's game. And maybe he'll look dumb, but it's just like, I think at best he's a tight end too. And again, we're talking about 5th round guys and 4th round guys, so it's like, you know, not all these guys are going to turn to good players or starting players.
Yeah, all these guys. So Bobby read an ad after the first 4 players, and now we're doing the last 4 players. Like we said, a lot of these players are kind of like in that same tier of, hey, you're good. Maybe you could be good. You're probably going to be average. So I will say, he has a resume of one-handed catches. So it's tough to determine. No, here's the thing.
I think that's the reason why people fall in love with him, because you see those highlight one-handed catches, but that's not what makes you a good tight end in the NFL. Some of these cool one-handed catches.
See Clemson 2020, Wisconsin 2019, Alabama January of 2021. There's fun one-handed catches, and I could see where people are saying he had 54 career catches, 12 touchdowns on 54 career catches. That's a touchdown every 4.5 catches. And I'm talking about that's your career. That's not just 1 year. It's your entire career at Ohio State. He had 5 contested catches just this year. So I could see where people are like, trying to project, because that's what you're trying to do with Jeremy Ruckert. He's going to put up better production in the pros than what he did at Ohio State, because I think it's just inevitable if he's getting playing time. So it's just a matter of how much better is he going to be and how much of a projection is he. You're muted.
That makes sense. Well, let me do the math in my head real quick. So if he starts 17, or let's see, so 11 games.
Also this too, only 8 career targets of 20 plus yards, 5 catches though. Only 1 career catch over 30 yards. So that's also one of those things where it's tough, because is it on the player or is it on scheme of that they're not getting, a catch of 20 plus yards or 30 plus yards? Like I'm not talking about air yards here. I'm talking about a single play. Only 1 career catch over 30 yards. That's tough to evaluate.
And I think he's better working the deep stuff, I honestly do, than he is the short stuff. But he averaged 28 yards per game for Ohio State. Everyone keeps saying he's going to have better production in the NFL. It's like, okay, if someone comes in and starts him, can he have like 32 yards per game? Sure. Just by pure, passing game, and, the way it is different than the college, where you're going to use the tight ends more than you do at Ohio State, because all their wide receivers are balling and they're so vertical. But it's like, I don't view that as like, oh, he was held back by Ohio State. I just don't think he's very good. I think he's average at everything. So when you're average at everything, I don't think that makes a good player.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I like Jake Ferguson better than Jeremy Ruckert, but I think a lot of people would adamantly say they like Ruckert a lot better than most guys in this class.
Yeah.
Tough for us.
I saw it stuck in my head. One guy who's pretty big. I don't think he's really a scout, but he does draft stuff. And there's a play where he broke one tackle, gained 2 yards, and fumbled. And he's like, I really feel like Jeremy Ruckert's tight end one for me.
Oh.
And I was like, and he wasn't being like sarcastic at all.
Yeah, that was a me moment last year with Elijah Vera Tucker.
But Elijah Vera Tucker was really good though, so you have that on your side. Justin, read the ad, and then we'll get into Cade Otton and Chigo.
Yeah, 2 more players left. Baseball fans, we're going to a baseball game. It's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. New customers can bet just $5 on any team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. It's that simple. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still take a swing at Stacks of Green with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Baseball Contest. New customers can play free for thousands in prizes with their first deposit. Pick a lineup of 2 pitchers and 8 batters while staying under the salary cap and rack up the points for hits, runs, strikeouts, and more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code JOHNBOY. Bet just $5 and win $200 in free bets if your team wins their game. That's promo code JOHNBOY at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. 21 plus, restrictions apply. MLB trademarks used with permission. See show notes for details. It was arguably one of the smoothest ad reads I've ever had in my life.
All right, next on the list.
What were you thinking about saying there?
I was thinking about making something awkward, or I don't know.
The awkward silence was enough there. So
there we go. Next on the list is someone that I'm not as high on as other people, and that's Cade Otton, tight end out of Washington, who's 6'5", 247 pounds. Not really good production at Washington, but again, they run the ball a ton. But he's a true inline tight end. Like he's as inline of a tight end as they get. He's going to line up, and I think he's a good blocker. Like he's an extremely willing blocker with good technique. And he's an overall good blocker. I do think there's times where he can get squeezed down, but again, he's an overall good blocker. Speed is average with decent get off. Like he's got just as good a speed as most guys in this class. You know, besides the Isaiah Likeleys or Jelani Woods when he's running in a straight line. Here's the thing that has me low on him, though, Justin. He really struggles versus man when he gets jammed or gets hands on him. Like, really, really struggles. Like, it's pathetic how bad it is. And then you pair that with not having great speed, it's like, well, I just think you're going to have issues getting open in the NFL. I just think that that's too much of an issue for me to get over. But versus zone, he does a good job. He's pretty crisp on his breaks, but again, just not going to separate a ton. Good job selling at the stem, and versus zone finding the hole, but not as good as other guys that we talked about. Good hands to pluck from the air, and he can move a bit when he's got the ball in his hand. But Justin, as I can't get over that when it's like anytime he got hands on him, he was just like eliminated from a play, and I can't trust a tight end who has that happen to him. Yeah,
I feel like he has a lot of experience at Washington. He was a 4-year starter. Washington also has a good track record of producing NFL tight ends. Hunter Bryant being one. Joshua Perkins, I feel like, is a name that I'm somewhat familiar with, but Hunter Bryant is the most significant one there. I feel like he has a lot of success running in the intermediate part of the field, being successful there. But the thing is if you're being slowed down by some sort of physicality in the secondary, then that's going to limit how much production you can have over the middle of the field, and especially if we're thinking about Brian Dable's offense of those crossing routes, right? If you have somebody trailing you and you're being slowed down, that's going to be tough. I have rounds his breaks instead of sharp cuts, which a lot of guys in this draft class have that commonality as well. He's not a thumper. Average, I would say Cade Otton, kind of all over the place, is a pretty average player all around. That's what I would say.
With the really bad area, this pop filter is really screwing me up with muting my mic. With the really bad area of when he gets hands on him, he's bad, and that's why it's below a guy like Jeremy Ruckert. So yeah, I'm just not a huge fan on him. I don't feel like belaboring it.
Yeah,
but there is some good ability there.
You could say this is another guy that was limited by scheme and role at Washington.
It was.
I mean, mostly targeted in the intermediate part of the field. Maybe should have been targeted a little bit more and on the seams. He's a willing blocker. He brings it.
He's a good blocker. He's a good blocker.
And you can even make an argument, 247 pounds, he can develop a little bit more strength to not just become a willing, but to become a more well-rounded blocker. And hey, maybe if you develop a little bit more strength, that'll help you when guys are being more physical. So Cade Otton's a guy that I know our guy NYG Daily Weiss he really likes. So could be an option. It all depends on where. If the Giants are reaching for a tight end, then maybe we're having a different conversation. But if they take one day 3, it's like, hey, we'll talk ourselves into him. We'll look at the upside. So,
all right, last on this list, a very, very interesting player. And Justin, I'm going to say it. If the Giants draft 2 tight ends, he'll be one of them because he fits that H-back role. And it is Chigoziem Okonkwo. I think I pronounced that right. Tight end out of Maryland.
Chig.
He goes by Chig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chig can move. He's
an exciting player. So I have him ranked below these guys because he's not like a traditional tight end, but it's like I would draft him ahead of other guys because like, okay, you find a role for him, but it's just a limited role. All right, so listen to this player. 6'2", 238 pounds. That doesn't sound like a tight end. It sounds like a linebacker. Ran a 4.5 240, a 35.5-inch vertical jump. This past year for Maryland, had 52 catches, but only 8.6 yards per catch. In 2020, he missed the season with myocarditis, which is like some type of heart thing.
It's inflammation in the heart.
Yeah, I read what it is, but it's like, I don't know what all these words mean.
No.
Here's what he is. He's a raw player who will fit the H-back role and move. You're going to move him all around. You're going to move him all around the field. And we're like, what is H-back? It's like that mix between tight end and fullback. You know, where it's like you can have some receiving ability. You can line up in line. You can line up at fullback and block. Like it's an H-back. Really good speed and burst. Just overall, really athletic. And when you line him up in line, really brings it as a blocker. Like he's a good blocker. He's aggressive. He's flexible. He uses his feet. He brings leverage. He has hand power. The issue, though, people would say is because he's 6'2", big defensive ends are going to squeeze him down. But I don't see him ever getting disengaged. Like he's a really good blocker. Okay, that's inline. Well, guess what? At H-back role, you're not just going to be an inline blocker. You use him as a lead blocker, a wham blocker. He comes with speed and power. And so we just spent all this time talking about his blocking, and this is a guy who's an athletic, like not a freak. He's athletic. I won't call him an athletic freak.
Yeah, Jelani Woods is an athletic freak.
He's really athletic. He's not an athletic freak when you think about the fact that he's 6'2". As far as in the passing game, his route running is just extremely elementary. Like he's not a good route runner, and it's all one speed. That being said, with that, his breaks, his cuts, they're very quick, and ability like his agility is really nice. As far as receiving game, he's mostly used in motion and flats and drag routes, and he's just not going to be a part of the route tree as like an inline tight end or even as a split out tight end. But he gets real yak. Like he gets real yak. Yes. He's a weapon. He runs like a running back. He has vision. He has
great. I was about to say great vision with the ball in his hands, and he's someone you want to get going in a game. So let's just
refusal to go down. Refuses to go down.
Let's use 2020 as an example with Caden Smith, right? You know, he had did he have 100% catch rate in 2020?
Yeah.
So you're throwing to a guy in the flat like that. You know, Caden Smith a little bit more of that stereotypical thumper tight end, right? If you're throwing a ball to Chig in the flat, I'm excited about what he can do because of his vision. Check out, I believe it's against Michigan State. I literally wrote this down.
Might have been Michigan.
He had a touchdown on the right sideline versus Michigan State that was very impressive, where he showed off like power, his speed, the explosiveness, his balance to stay inbounds. He was like jumped over a guy on the sideline. So
he refuses to go down.
You don't see guys like this on what probably will be day 3, and that's what makes him exciting. You know, you're usually seeing these tight ends that are boring. I guess they block kind of well, but they're not going to do anything with the ball in their hands. You're going to get your Rhett Ellison's day 3 of the draft, and it's going to be like, all right, this is just a body. But Chig, if you want a guy that can kind of get you a little bit excited about what he can do with the ball in his hands, and he kind of needs that coaching, and he's going to be, you're drafting him to kind of be that backup player. Chig is a guy to get excited over because he is different from a tight end that you can find late in the draft.
Yeah, and Grump, the football Grump, the Just Giants podcast, he was the one who turned me on to this guy. talking about the H-back role and showed some clips of him. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. When you watch him, like, okay, it matches. And the Giants brought him in for a top 30 visit, which is like, you don't see day 3 tight ends come in for top 30 visits. In fact, I think the top 30 visits are all too top heavy. Yeah, do you have that opinion?
I haven't been following that as much as I want to because
it's all the top prospects.
What do you mean?
Like Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon, Trayvon, Jermaine, like they just do all the top, like the top 15 on their big board probably come in for top 30 visits.
Yeah, I mean, I've also seen like James Cook is coming for a top 30 visit. Like for me,
yeah, he did too.
Just as like a cat, that doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like not your top 30 on your board. It's just 30 players. You only get to bring 30 in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not like your top 30 on your board.
Dumb comment.
Listen, the Giants have not flat out said, but it's been reported they're looking for this H-back role, and Chig fits that. So I think the Giants, there's a really good chance they take him, and I think if the Giants were to take 2 tight ends, it's like a guarantee they take Chig.
I'm for it. Guy that can move, exciting, day 3. Don't just give me a thumper who's boring. Give me a guy that's exciting.
How about that? We love Chig. All right, that's an episode. Tight end draft preview. We got 2 more left. We got running backs on Friday, and then the big finale, offensive tackles. Excited for that one. I still got to get some guys done for the offensive tackle class, but excited about it.
Go check out.
I'm excited about talk about Charles Cross to our podcast listeners.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, before that, go check out Talkin' Football, that channel where you've already done Evan Neal. You've already done Daniel Falele. You've already done Charles Cross. You did an Evan Neal versus Trayvon Walker matchup breakdown. I got
the lineup for Bernard Raymond one right here. I just haven't been able to get around to do it.
You just did a Ikem Ekwonu draft breakdown on Talkin' Giants, and you're about to do an Ikem Ekwonu versus Jermaine Johnson breakdown on Talkin' Football. So if you're like, oh, why haven't they talked about tackles? I'm really annoyed. Well, go over to Talkin' Football because Bobby Skinner has posted, I think, close to like 15 or 16 draft breakdowns on there. Plus, there's some other ones on Talkin' Giants. So
we're on pace to have more done than we did last year.
I think there was 20. If I'm looking at the playlist,
last year I thought we did 18. And remember last year I did one every weekday of draft. Or no, I did 3 a week for draft month.
There are 28 2021 draft film breakdowns on this playlist last year.
Okay, so I did do more. Okay.
Yeah, you definitely did more last year.
Yeah, but some of them, I'll be honest, weren't great. It's like, because I promised to do, us either have a podcast or a draft breakdown out every day. So it was like, all right, let me shoehorn Kyle Pitts in here, even though we're not going to draft him. All right, that's an episode. We'll see you guys on Friday talking about running back. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.